Hi guys, in this lesson I'm going to talk about what to expect in the ANSC01 exam as well as the ANSC01 exam. So as you can see by the certification on the screen here, I took the Advanced Networking Specialty exam in November of 2021. Now, not long after that, AWS announced that they're bringing out a new version of the exam. So I took the C00 and now there's going to be the ANSC01. So the ANSC01 is a bit different to the C00. It covers many of the same topics, but there are also some additional topics. Now, I have taken the C01 beta exam. The final exam could be slightly different, and it's due for release in July 2022, but it's likely to be very similar to what I experienced in the beta. So what I've done in this course is I've made sure that the course covers the topics for both the C00 and the C01 exam. So between now and July 2022, any students taking the C00 exam are going to be fine taking this course. And as we get a bit closer to the release of the new exam, you're also going to find everything you need for the new exam as well. And I will point out some topics that you don't need to concentrate too much on if you're only doing the C00 exam. So let's go over some of the details for the exam. The level is specialty. The difficulty of these exams is on par with the professional level exams from AWS. Now, I did find the C01 to be a bit more difficult, but that may be because I didn't do much preparation for the new topics that were showing up. Now, the length of the exam is 170 minutes, and the format is 65 questions. Now, the 170 minutes and the 65 questions could possibly change for the C01. I'm not sure that yet, but we'll see as time tells, but this is definitely correct for the C00. The cost is $300, and I don't expect that to change. And for the delivery method, it should be both in a testing center and online, so you have a choice. With AWS exams, the scoring is scaled between 100 points and 1,000, and the minimum passing score for this exam is 750 points, so 75%. The format of the questions is multiple choice. That's where you have 4 possible answers and one of them is correct. With multiple response, you have 2 or more correct answers out of 5 or more options. Now, there are some knowledge prerequisites that AWS recommends you have, and I'm just going to put these on the screen now. I've literally copied and pasted these from the exam guide for the C00 exam, so apologies if it's a bit wordy. Essentially, they're looking for professional experience using AWS, things like security best practices, storage, and networking, and so on. They expect you to have knowledge of advanced networking architectures such as VPNs, MPLS, and virtual private LAN service. You should have familiarity with the development of automation scripts and tools, and they give you some ideas of the types of scenarios that those might include. You need to understand IP addressing, including classless interdomain routing and subnetting for both IPv4 and IPv6, and also network security systems such as web application firewalls, IDS and IPS systems, and DDoS protection. Now, we will be going over all of this within the course. For IP addressing, you definitely need to understand how to come up with the right IP subnets and CIDR blocks for specific use cases. Now, I will go over the basics of IP addressing. I'll teach you how to do that, but it is quite an in-depth topic, so if you have some previous experience or you've learned it from somewhere else, then that will really come in handy. Now, these are the recommendations from AWS, but you don't necessarily have to have experience in a hands-on setting with all of these technologies. For AWS services, I highly recommend that you should have already done at least the associate level certifications. It's going to be very difficult to take a specialty level certification if you don't already have a fundamental understanding of AWS. I want to cover mapping the C00 to the C01. Now, I've added links to the exam guides for both certifications to this lesson, and all I'm going to do here is try and help you to understand how one maps to the other. Now, there are 6 domains. These are the knowledge areas in the C00, and there's only 4 in the C01. So let's have a look at them side by side. So for C00, the domain 1 is design and implement hybrid IT network architectures at scale. And that maps to domain 1 network design for the C01. Domain 2 is design and implement AWS networks. Now, that's got a design and an implementation piece. The design obviously maps to domain 1 for the C01. Implementation maps better to domain 2, so it's not a perfect one-to-one mapping. Also, domain 3 from the C00, automate AWS tasks, maps into network implementation, as does configure network integration with application services, which is domain 4 of the C00. Domain 5 for the C00 is about implementing and designing security and compliance, and that maps to domain 4 for the C01. And then lastly, domain 6 for the C00 is manage, optimize, and troubleshoot the network, and that maps to domain 3, network management and operation. Now, as I said, it's not a perfect mapping, but I'm just helping you to understand how these fit together. Now, pretty much everything that comes up in the C00 is relevant to the C01, but the C01 also has some additional topics. So therefore, there are some topics that you don't need to concentrate on if you're doing the C00. Now, again, this is not perfect. Some of them could possibly come up in the C00, but if you are taking that exam, these topics may not show. So AWS outposts, we've got local zones, accelerated site-to-site VPNs, provider-independent IPs, BYOP, might come up in the C00, definitely comes up in the C01. Now, Route 53 Resolver comes up in both exams, but there's significantly more coverage in the C01, and it also includes coverage for DNSSEC. AWS Network Firewall and DNS Firewall are on the C01. And there's a lot more scenarios on centralized and shared services VPCs, though those do come up in both exams as well. IGMP multicast domains, more coverage for the C01, as well as traffic mirroring. IPv6 doesn't come up much in the C00, but it came up a lot more in the C01, as well as gateway load balancer. There's SD-WAN scenarios are becoming more common now with transit gateway, VXLANs, GRE with BGP, VRF, and equal cost multipathing. Also in the C01, you've got EKS and the Kubernetes autoscaler and horizontal pod autoscaler. Self-signed certificates with the AWS Certificate Manager and AWS organizations. That may not be a fully comprehensive set of new topics, and it really remains to be seen when the new exam gets finally released exactly what is in it, and we'll find out at that time and make sure we update our content to include any topics that we've missed. But if you are doing the C00, then these areas are something which you can kind of pass over and not concentrate as much on. So that's it for this lesson. I hope that helps you understand the exam a bit better and the differences between the C00 and C01. It's always a bit of a challenging time when we're transitioning between exams, and I'm trying to do my best to make sure that I've got everyone covered.